Not as good as your hair, but you know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Mr. Matt Miller. We actually met each other through some buddies playing some softball on a team that we still play on. And he was at an education meeting, and I later found out he was student teaching this last semester. So we are going to jump into all sorts of things, teaching, his student teaching experience. He's currently doing some long-term subbing, and I'm sure he'll bounce around a little bit and get a lot even more experiences since he is now finished with student teaching from the first semester. So like I said, what Matt Miller, I do have underlined that I gotta say it's Miller time, but
Yeah.
anytime Miller steps to the plate, it's Miller time. And I will say he also averages about 20 more home runs a summer than I do. That's because I bat leadoff and I haven't hit a home run since I was 17. So anyways, Matt Miller, what school were you at? What grade were you teaching when you student taught and got basically I know again you've started subbing in different places, which is I will say from experience and from having my own student teacher, and we'll get more into that, is huge experience to not only be in different schools, but different grade levels. You're not being observed, which is another huge one at a young age. Is I know when you guys student teach, you're kind of under a microscope at times. I know when I have my student teacher, I am always there to help her or him. I've only had two female teachers, but I know when you start subbing for the first time, it's just nice to, I mean, the sub plan's there. You don't have to plan anything, which is even better, but you don't have admin or any supervisors kind of watching you. So you kind of get that idea out of your head. But in general, with your student teaching, what school are you at and what grade were you teaching?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Um, so first things first, I started at Wilmore Elementary. I started at the beginning of end of August. I was there for 8 weeks. So I went from, it was actually two schools I was at. I was at Wilmore, and then 3 days out of the week we went to Roosevelt. So I traveled.
Okay.
It was kind of different traveling because it's two different schools. Wilmore is about the size of about 200 kids, and then Roosevelt a little bit under that. Um, at Wilmore, you have about two grades. So you have two second grades, two third grades, such and such. But at Roosevelt, it was only one grade. So it was only one class per grade. So only one fifth grade, only one fourth grade. So that was pretty interesting. Got to see that. Then mid October, I transferred over to Legacy High School, where I was kind of different there because there's a block schedule instead of a kind of a different
Yep.
um, regular period schedules as regular high schools go. Kind of feels like more of a college
Yep.
schedule, which is super nice. I kind of like it more than actual periods because you have more time to do more
Yep.
activities with students and such. So that's really nice. And when I was there, I did multiple different classes through different teachers and such. So I wasn't stuck to one student teacher. So one teacher there. I was always with different PE teachers with different classes. So that was
Mhm.
super nice.
Awesome. Wilmore Elementary. Shout out to Jill Vallejo, my former principal.
Oh
So
yeah, super
she
nice.
accidentally sent an email out to the entire elementary staff in Bismarck the other day, and I was like, I kind of miss getting emails from Jill. But so shout out to all the former Lincolnites at Wilmore over there. But on a side note with Wilmore, that's certainly a kind of a lower socioeconomic school. And I know you kind of touched on how small it is, especially
Yeah.
compared to what I'm used to at Lincoln. We have like 640 plus. So were there any like experiences? And I know we'll get plenty into all of the experiences. And again, I have highlighted the word experience in this conversation will be said probably a few too many times, but that's really what this is in student teaching and getting into subbing is you're experiencing so many things. And a lot of it isn't stuff that you were like, I'm looking forward to seeing this. It's a lot of stuff just because teaching is just on the fly and adjusting and being flexible, but enjoying all of it. So were there any experiences, like very specific experiences that you can recall at a Wilmore or Roosevelt in a lower school? I know I'm pretty sure both of them are title schools, but they're both schools. Those are the kind of the environments I've always loved, because I know a lot of the kids really appreciate the teaching they get because it's in a lower school and there's a whole lot more to that conversation. But what were maybe some experiences you can highlight off the top of your head in being in especially since you were also at Legacy, which is a very, I mean, very nice school. I mean, all these
It's
schools
really brand
eventually
new.
feed
Yeah.
right into it. Correct, and a very new school compared to how much of an older building Wilmore is. So do you want to touch on any experiences you had to highlight in the fact that it was a lower school and an older building and only 200 students total?
Yeah, for sure. First things first, Wilmar used to be on the number one lowest income school in Bismarck. Actually, this year actually got bumped to second, so they're not the number one anymore. So that's always nice to see it go up a little bit. Um, Biggest thing there I really noticed was while running my demographic kind of thing, with students, um, whites are the minority at that school.
Hmm.
We have a lot of Hispanics, we have a lot of African American. We also have a lot of natives that are there, that really take over a big portion of that school, which is something I found really interesting. Another thing that I really liked about Wilmore was how, like you touched base on, is how the students really appreciated teaching. A lot of those kids come from different houses. Housing is not the best for them, and so when they come to school, they literally look up to you. And so being that big role model is something that I really appreciate, and helping them out and always being there for them. And so sometimes some kids might come in having a bad experience the day before, or having a rough home life. They look forward to going to school. So being able to touch base with them and kind of comfort them a little bit throughout the day is super important for me.
Absolutely. I'll also obviously highlight we're both male teachers, and being a male teacher in an environment and building like that can be massive, not just for yourself and your staff, but the kids there. Many of those families, unfortunately, don't have dad or father figure at home or outside of school. So we kind of get to fill that role, and it's as crazy it is, it's pretty enjoyable because, like I said, and you said, they appreciate you and they appreciate what you do for them. So I enjoyed a lot having a student teacher. I will kind of flash back to my first year teaching in the sense of going into this next kind of topic was the creative and new ideas. I remember starting at in Hazen, my very first year, we had, I think, 6 first year teachers in our school district, and I think 4 or 5 of them were in elementary school. And I learned quickly how cool it is to have all those people and have all those just creativity, the new ideas, the everyone's up to date pretty well on innovation and technology. I've had several practicum students that brought a lot of that in, which also kind of relights my fire and revamps my creativity a little bit, which is another reason I'm excited to have another student teacher this semester. So I just kind of highlighted that I love the new ideas that come in. It's part of the reason I love having my educator Instagram page. I have a personal one and I have an educator one. One because you get to see all these teachers doing different things. I try to ignore, and it's kind of a big thing on social media, that all these teachers make it look easy, or they post the things that go well, but not the things that don't. And all these other people think they're perfect and their bulletin boards are all beautiful. And I'm like, I shun away from that, but the creativity and the new ideas, I've done a lot more brain breaks this year because I follow a teacher that does a lot of them. So
Yep.
I will say that I very much have learned quickly to continue to value people your age. And I know I'm only a couple of years older than you, but it's definitely nice to have some new creative ideas in the building, or no matter what classroom you're in. So um, let's see, what do we got here? Sort of a cliche question, but what made you decide that teaching was the career that you wanted to pursue? Maybe that was early on, maybe it was halfway through college that maybe you even switched majors. I don't even really know what your story was from your college days because I kind of met you halfway through your journey of
Yep.
college and then found out you were going into education later on. So, what
Yep.
made you decide that education was the place for you?
Yeah, for sure. So, graduate high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I did want to play baseball. That's the biggest thing, right? Going to call it right out of high school. So I actually went to BSC and played 2 years there. Um, about halfway through my year at BSC, I was kind of struggling, figuring out what I want to be. Is kind of in between. I want to do some finance stuff, some money stuff. But I look back my days, I was like, what's something I really enjoy? And I remember looking back on high school, and it's always that one or two teachers that really inspired you. And I remember going to PE class and then just having that, you know, I don't have to worry about anything right now. All I have to worry about is me having fun and relaxing. That was a big thing for me. And my PE teacher always told me this quote, and it always stuck with me. Right for class, you might have all these problems, but for at least an hour out of your day, you can drop all those things at the doorway and then walk right through that door and have a blank slate for that, just for that period, even if that, and just forget everything else and just focus on that. And that was something that really stuck to me, was that quote. Um, so right there, and we did so many fun activities in high school and even in elementary and middle school. I just enjoyed PE in general, just for me being super active all through my life, including sports and such and working out. So I knew something like kind of want to get more physical. I'd rather not sit behind a desk all day. Something I want to be active. I want to be participating in. That's a big thing too, is being able to participate in kids, get them all active and having a fun time during it. So I realized that PE was kind of something I want to go into. And plus, along with PE, it goes along with coaching. So hopefully this next year, so I can start coaching as well.
Absolutely. I like it. It's crazy where life takes us and who inspires us and influences us. And sometimes we don't even notice it till later, and it completely changes our outlook and the decisions we make. So, especially since you kind of switched your path at a time where, I mean, a lot of people switch their paths in college, or they find out they don't like something as much as they thought they would, or it's not something they actually want to do every single day as a job. Um, as you were student teaching, were there any specific experiences during your undergrad, so not during student teaching, that really prepared you for what student teaching brought to you? So when you were kind of during your time in education courses, was there anything that stuck out to you that during your student teaching time really helped you, something that maybe you didn't expect, or maybe it's something that didn't quite click during undergrad, where when you started teaching, it kind of crossed your mind that, well, this is an important part of this career?
Yeah, for sure. So at UND, there's no such thing as a PE degree up there. So I technically had the double major up there. So I majored in kinesiology and I also majored in education up there.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so being able to major in kinesiology, I learned a lot about the body. And so I know in high school you teach a lot of weights classes, and you have a bunch of kids who have never lifted weights before, or concerned about, or how to do certain forms and such. And at UND, we had this one teacher. He's from Australia, actually. He did a lot of coaching for the Australian men's basketball team over there, and so he did a lot of like weightlifting and such. And he was such a good teacher, because for me, I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. I'd rather learn doing something than learn something behind a book. And so when I was there, we have one day in the classroom, and then one day would be in the UND's weight room, where all like this, well, all the kids in sports and stuff would work out. And we go there, we all work on different muscles, we learn different like components of body parts and what's the focus of it, and kind of benefits of using different stretches, different exercises for certain exercises and different sports and such. And so when I had this for at student teaching, I was in charge of a strength and conditioning class. And so being able to come up with my own workouts and explain why we're doing those certain workouts for those
Hmm.
students was something that I really like kind of clicked on me. I was like, well, I'm actually using the knowledge I learned at college now actually into my actual career field. So that was pretty awesome.
That's super interesting that you say that, and it's interesting in a really good way that, and I'm sure there's PE teachers, plenty of places that are just DJ for the day, and I'm sure you you know plenty of them, or have seen or experienced some of their classes where you don't really understand the purpose of it. I know kindergartners and first graders aren't walking in asking what the purpose of a game is, because they just come in and get their bodies moving and
Yep.
whatnot. But I know, as you said, when you get into the high school stages, and a lot of those kids are looking for, why are we doing this? What's the point of this? But I think that's really valuable that you were able to get a kinesiology. That's I never would have thought about that being a thing, but I'm sure it's really helpful. So you've mentioned both the elementary level and the high school level. Where do you see yourself when you have a full-time job? I don't know if you've interviewed for anything, or if you've got anything set. Whether you prefer the elementary gym setting, or the high school. Like you mentioned, if you're a high school PE teacher, you probably teach like four different courses, and half of them probably don't even occur in the gym.
Yeah. So as of right now, I'm at Legacy right now. Actually, one of the teachers there is actually retiring this year. So over Christmas break, they had a sign up page wherever where you can submit your application on. So I actually submitted my application through into Legacy. So hopefully I can get that here, get a chance to interview for that. That'd be nice. For practically wise, I rather choose high school over elementary. The reason why I say that is I feel like I'm teaching more life practical skills in high school, so I feel like it's more valuable. The thing I kind of ran into when I was student teaching at an elementary level, it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed a lot of it. I just felt at the same time I was more kind of a daycare kind of setting. I feel like I was always having to watch every single
Yep.
kid, you know. And so the biggest thing is I want to make a really big impact through teaching and you know, like teaching students how, because you know a big thing, kind of not switching topics here, but a big thing you see now in younger grades and younger people is how much they are working out. And so that's a big thing now these days. And so I really want to, you know, teach students how to like properly lift, you know, feel confident going into a gym on their own. That's the biggest thing as a PE teacher is having students, you know, yes, you're gonna have an hour a day out of your day to do PE. But having that time, you know, going out after PE or after class,
Correct.
stuff like that is always important. So and when they go do that, it's always important to make sure they have the proper form, they're not hurting themselves, and they also feel confident. And so that's kind of a big thing for me is I can be able to teach more important life skills and yeah, before they graduate.
I absolutely echo everything you just said. I know I go work out, and I probably wouldn't know what in the world I was doing when I go work out unless I had my strength coach that I had at Mary, who's now at Sanford Power. Actually, I mean, he was fantastic. All of his assistants were fantastic, but I know it's kind of cool now that I look at it as I'm getting older and been out of Mary for several years now, how many athletes he's had and how many assistants he's had that have strength positions all over the Midwest, and he's kind of had his own coaching tree. And a lot of the guys weren't even guys he was assistants or had GAs. It was a lot of players that like yourself were in kinesiology or some of those different science departments, but they understand and they learned how to do things, why we do things.
Yep.
I always tell my wife when I go to the gym, and I won't say which one because who knows what could happen there. But when I
Mhm.
see people at any age and they have a personal trainer with them and they say, well, my back hurts and this hurts and this hurts. And in my head, I'm like, because you're not being taught properly, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
And
There's a
that's the
difference
biggest
between being
thing.
sore and being in pain.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. Like most injuries come from improper lifting. And the thing I really want to preach when I teach is like, I don't care how much weight you can put up. What I really
Mhm.
care about is if you have good form because good form always comes before weightlifting or like any sport. Good form for basketball shooting, good form for
Mhm.
throwing a baseball, good form for throwing a softball, just anything. Even in gym class, you can teach good form how to do a certain activity. Right? Not every kid's going to be perfect, but you know, at least give them that chance to practice on it. And you know, that's always a big thing is making sure they got better form before they actually start trying more advanced things. And so that's why I like to preach a lot.
It's enormous, man. I know even from my own personal experience, I don't have any certificates. I don't have any weightlifting records, but I've had several people in, I mean, the past 3 or 4 years, even at the gym, come by me and ask me questions about stuff. And to me, I just kind of laugh because I'm this 200-pound guy that lifts 2 days a week just to just to feel good and get the body going. And these people think I'm an
Yeah.
expert. Like it's as difficult as you make it.
Yeah.
It's not really watching videos. It's just knowing what you're doing and your body and knowing what your body can handle. Like you just
Yeah.
said, nobody cares how much weight's on the bar. It's are you doing it correctly or are you going to be in pain? That's like I
Exactly.
said, that's all these people. Oh, my back hurts. This hurts. Is that
Yep.
normal? No, it's not normal. You want to be sore,
Yeah.
but that's definitely not normal. So,
Exactly.
what is something that you had? I know you kind of touched on your different kind of perspectives from your own experiences having elementary kids versus having high school kids, and obviously the different purposes that both students are aware of in those classes. But what's something, regardless of grade level, that might have stuck out to you in your student teaching or with your high school kids that might again stuck out to you that you'll definitely kind of keep with you as you kind of continue on your journey, so to speak, onto having your own Mr. Miller classes and not just be student teaching or subbing, but being a full-time teacher. Is there anything that stuck out to you, regardless of age level or grade level, that will definitely stick with you for a while?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that was stuck on me is setting expectations and setting rules. So when you make classroom rules and such, you don't want to have a long, you don't have a short, you don't have a long list. You don't want that. You want to have a short, compact list that may has like 2 or 3 rules on it. When I was in elementary, about a lot of things were had making sure my students were lined up outside the gym door, 1 foot on the carpet, 1 foot on the tile, okay, and have them all in a straight line. They weren't touching anyone. They weren't doing that. Voices were off, and they were ready to participate for the day. That was a big rule for me because if you can set the standard right away before class, the class seems to rule move more perfectly. Having put that in perspective. Anyway, after that, and then in high school, big thing there was the switch from elementary to high school was how high schoolers everyone has a phone. They're always on their phones. That's a big
Yeah.
thing I really noticed, and everyone has AirPods in. Um, my rules there are just don't be on your phone. They don't dress at Legacy. They basically I grant a grade on participation, and if they go on their phone, if they go on their phone, they get docked for that day. Um,
And it's
yeah,
crazy how many can't pass PE still.
yeah, exactly. And we're doing finals. We're doing finals these last 2 days, so it's interesting. But yeah. So big phone thing, big phone usage. I always get after kids. You don't need to be on your phone for an hour. You can be away from it. You don't need it every second, every day. So that's a big thing. Also, big thing I really noticed when I went to high school is how every student has AirPods in. It's a big thing. Even when I was in high school, yes, kids wore AirPods and such, but not to the level where it is where now every student has basically headphones on or anything like that. The biggest rule is I don't care if you have them on. Like, you need to have one ear that you can be able to listen to. You can have one AirPod in, okay. But when I'm talking, I expect that music to be off. That's just one big rule I have. And so make sure they're always getting the rules. Make sure they're always participating, understand their expectations of the day too. That's always a big thing. I always tell them maybe just put their phone in their backpack so they're not being distracted by it for the rest of the period. So that's a big rule for me too as well.
That's awesome. That's also just shows that you don't have to make this complicated. It's
Nope.
there's a lot of things you learn from going through student teaching and subbing to where, like I said, you don't have someone observing you. You get to know people,
Yeah.
you get to meet people, but it's as complicated as you make it. And
Yep.
I'll echo what you said with the expectations and procedures, especially with the younger people, because of course I do it every day with fourth graders. It's
Yeah.
just having those rules, but I mean, so there's so much that could go with it. We could talk about that for
All
way
day.
too long, but
Yep.
half my students don't even listen to it the first time, so you also have to do it probably 2 or 3
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
But I'll also say, like, off of yours, with classes being where they're supposed to be and being ready for the next step, when you have your next class coming in or the previous class, they see that too. So
Yeah.
they see the expectation, they see other kids following through with it. And I know when I had fifth graders last year, we were actually in a first grade hallway, just how our school is set up. So we had two fifth
Mhm.
grade classes surrounded by first graders. And I said, you guys have it tough because you're kind of under a microscope out here.
Yeah.
If you do something you're not supposed to, a first grader sees you, and whether it's right or wrong, they think it's right because you're the big kid. You run this place, and that's how they view you. So you have to make sure you don't have to be perfect. I'm never expecting
Mhm.
perfection, but that's definitely something that also sparked in my head from last year
And
was
that's
just be a leader. And we talked about being a leader, being role models. You're
Yep.
surrounded by people who are all younger than you.
Yep. And they all look up to them too. So that's always a big thing. Setting that expectation high. So
Correct. So going into your student teaching experience, so flashback a little bit to even before the fall, and I know it doesn't even feel like before the fall anymore as it's -5 degrees out right now.
exactly.
But going into your student teaching period, was there anything in the classroom that you were anxious or nervous about that you were exposed to, and it kind of changed your comfort level based on how you might have responded to it, good or bad?
Sure. I think the biggest thing I was really worried about going into is what happens if a child or a student says no, like doing an activity and they won't do it. That's always super hard. Everyone you want them to participate, but when they say no to you, it's always hard, and you don't want to force them to do it because then they're not gonna
Mhm.
you know do as well. They would just be lollygagging around and such. But for in the high school level, basically if they don't participate, they don't get points. So it's a bit different from elementary. High school, basically, if you don't participate, you won't get points, and you won't basically pass the class. Elementary, you basically gotta talk with them. You gotta like understand, getting on their level is a big thing. Being able to understand what's wrong and what can you do to fix it is super important. Sometimes all I need is someone just to talk to for a little bit, and that usually fixes it. So that's one thing I was really anxious about, and that's kind of something how I can, kind of combated it. So
It's so interesting because I bet I could ask so many people your age that same question. I could ask 10 people that question and get 10 completely different answers just based on what your thoughts were going into it. So I
yeah,
find it I find it interesting, and like we've said plenty of times already, you already have experiences from two very different age levels. So but you both had the same question going into both of them, and I totally understand the no. And we
yeah,
kind of, I don't know if it's, I'd never want to say it's this generation, because I'm sure there's plenty of people our age that the word no was used. And
yeah,
I was just raised that the teacher told you to do this, so you're doing it. But there's
yep,
plenty of kids that are not raised like that.
for
I don't
sure.
know if it's always been a thing or if it's becoming worse and worse as the years go on. But like I said, it's interesting that that's the thing that you kind of went in being nervous about.
Yep.
Was there? I know you touched on it a little bit, but um, kids who said no, were there any solutions that you found as a teacher that worked better than others? I'm sure every kid responds and reacts differently to redirection when they don't want to do something. But were there any solutions that you watched from your cooperating teacher or that you used that worked more effectively than another?
Sure. So my actually teacher at Wilmore, her name's Mindy. So she actually graduated from Minot, and she came up with this really awesome way to, calm down students if they're angry, mad, sad, anxious, kind of thing. We call it the calm corner. So basically, there's three different timers. There's a 5 minute, a 3 minute, and a 1 minute timer, like a sand timer. You flip over.
Yep.
Um, and over there, they can sit on a mat. There's a poster over there they can read, kind of explain like how they feel about their feelings and stuff, and how they're feeling. Um, but also they have a little box of like fidget toys and such. And then we also have this ball that opens up and then closes. And basically, when do that, they want to focus on their breathing. And so we call that the calm corner. And so basically, if a student's really agitated about something, we usually set them in that corner. And then they on their own, they set their own time. So they get 5 minutes, 3 minutes, or 1 minute. And when that time's up, they're ready to go back and play. But that corner has helped out tremendously when something doesn't go their way, super anxious, or say a student's really upset another student because how they played or such and such. That calm corner has come in great. Having them go over there, and that also in that calm corner, that's where we go talk to them too. So, um, and then usually if they do something bad, we also have a timeout corner, and there's a poster over there explaining why they're in timeout. And then when they're ready, we go talk to them and explain them why they're out. So they have to explain to us that why are they sitting out for it. And then second, and then they go back in and play. But if they sit out again, then they're out for the rest of the class period. So kind of setting
Gotcha.
those rules and expectations, but also um, having that corner is also nice to have students. If they're anxious or something's agitating them, they can always go there on their own and do that as well.
I like it. I don't know what too much of what happens in our gym class. I used to love going to PE with my students, but sometimes life gets so busy and you cherish every prep moment you can get in
Yep.
your own classroom. So I can't say I've been to PE too often unless there's something really fun going on. I
Yeah.
can't pass up a game of California or Mat kickball. So I'm
Yeah.
always in
We
there terrorizing somebody.
Yeah, we try to stay away from winning and losing games because there's always someone that's gonna be butthurt about it in elementary level. And so we as a teacher, we kind of stay away from that. Kind of focus on, team games like working together,
Yep.
or individual stuff working on your own. But if you do team games, you gotta make sure they understand like it's not life or death if they lose or win. Okay. Um, but if they're having a bad day in gym class, that's going to carry over into the classroom, and then the teacher has to deal with it too. So being able to, you got to plan for it, like certain grade types. So, and
Yep.
plus you also got to know your students. Like there's obviously going to be those students that are really competitive, and there's going to be those students that, won't get their way and they'll just have a bad time with it. So that's why always having that calm corner is also super nice too. So
I also find it interesting as you talked about the different timers, and I relate it to people who are outside of education that don't understand the importance of that, especially people who I don't want to really say the older generation who's not used to the newer way of doing things in education or the newer way of teaching kids how to cope with these things because decades ago they didn't teach these people how to
no,
do that. You usually just learned at home. So
yep,
when you talk about a calming corner in a gym, like people older than us in the older generation might look at us like, why would you need that? Why do you need some timers? Why don't you just figure it out? But they're like I said, you're also teaching kids how to cope with things. You're teaching kids how to reflect on what's not going my way and how can I move on. But we also do that as adults every day, and these
yep,
these same people don't understand that they do this every day. Every person ever on the planet does this every day. We don't sit in our vehicles with a timer and give us time to do it.
yeah,
It might be listening to music, it might be meditation, it might be just driving home in silence. But
yeah,
I've noticed since I became a teacher and saw these things early on, going, why do you need a timer to tell you when you're okay? Why do you need a poster to ask you questions on why you're in trouble? But it's teaching kids how to cope. And the more you teach it and see students utilizing it correctly and successfully, the more it clicks. And like I said, we all need it. Whenever we get angry, whether it's at our spouse or our roommates or our parents, you need time by yourself, and that's exactly the same thing as this, just in a different setting. So to people listening or watching this who are outside of education that don't understand the purpose of the timers, I do want to say that that's a very good idea at any elementary age. I would say a
yeah,
lot of my fourth graders probably need that sometimes.
yeah.
But somebody needs to tell some of my boys that there are no professional football scouts coming to their PE periods, because this
Exactly.
group isn't too bad, but I've had some that 2 hours later they're angry. I'm like, are you still not over PE? Like, dude, just move on. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah,
That's coming from a
yeah.
competitive fourth grade boy when I was in fourth grade. Like, just move on. It's over
Mhm.
and done with. But
Yeah, being able to tell them to cope off of win and loss, and not everything is going to go your way is also a really
mhm.
big thing. And if you look back on teaching, it's almost like you teach them like some like subject, but you're also teaching them life skills. So like right there, the coping, and then coping. Also even adults, even taking a step back and like taking a deep breath can almost solve almost anything. Reevaluating stuff and being able to take a deep breath and take a step back and all that kind of jazz has really helped me assess some stuff as well.
Correct. I will tell you, it definitely helps in learning how to be a husband and learning how to be a dad. There's a huge piece of it right there, and
Yeah.
keeping everyone happy, and especially yourself and the people you live with happy. So,
Mm.
as I mentioned before, I've had a student teacher before. Shout out to Miss Haley Becker. She's a fifth grade teacher at our school now. So I must have done something right because she got a job at the school she student taught at. Taught her everything I
Sweet.
know apparently. But I also started a new teacher, a new student teacher this Monday. Shout out to Miss Osi, who just joined us a few days ago and has already jumped in and done so many great things. But that's another reason that I love having young educators in our school and in our room, is because you guys are eager. You guys want to be in. You guys don't want to sit in the back and watch me teach a math lesson
Yeah.
for 45 minutes. You want to be doing stuff. And I know I met her about a month ago at the kind of meet and greet type thing, and she came into our class a few times before she even started, just to get to know me, get to know our room and our students. But I know I told her day one, I said, I don't want to overwhelm you, but I feel like you want to be in here and doing things. And she said, whatever you need me to do, I'll jump in and do. And I said, yeah, we can have conversations and you'll have wonderings and questions about why we do what we do, why I do what I do. But I said, you're going to learn so much from sitting down with kids small group, individual, one-on-one, all of that. And when she gets into her full teaching, she'll learn so much from being in the room by herself and all that sort of thing. So as you have just finished, and especially, I'm not just aiming this at my student teacher in general, but any student teacher who is either starting this semester or is still in their undergrad and might be starting in the next couple of semesters. So for someone like you who just recently finished up and is starting some sub jobs and looking forward to having your own gym, your own classroom full time, what is some advice that you might give them as they start this journey into having all these experiences in the real world instead of just a college classroom?
Yeah. Touching base, I'll be honest with you, I learned more in my practicum and my student teaching than anything I learned in the classroom. You learn so much
Absolutely.
more. I learned so much this past semester just from doing my student teaching than I ever did in my education classes at UND. Um, yeah, it's a big thing. The big thing I want to tell the incoming student teachers is get to know your students, get to know the staff, get to know everyone. That's always a big thing. You want to get your foot in the door. You want to know people. Always be able to do something. Is you say I'll do this, I'll do that. Put yourself out there. That really shows the people who work there, the staff that work there, that like yeah, this guy's a pretty good like teacher. Like what maybe we'll think about maybe hiring him. It's a good way to get your foot in the door. Also with students, being able to know all your students is a big thing to make your class flow well, and also makes your job way more enjoyable. Being able to know
Mhm.
your students, know you can also like you can joke with them. That's the best thing. As a P teacher, you get to joke with students, but you also get to teach them. And when they know your name and you know their name, it's also a respectful thing there as well. And so get to know your students. That's a big thing. And so then obviously when you get to know your students, get to know their skill level, and like kind of a little bit about their life, and so that's a big thing is to get to know your students. So
Relationships first, everything second.
yeah,
Relationships, you can't do anything without relationships. And I'll say that from an elementary standpoint. I'll say that from coaching baseball at Legacy with Eddie Streeter. Is I thought it was a big thing in elementary because it absolutely is, but said the older they get, the less some of them want relationships. But I've learned so much from Eddie Streeter interacting, and it helps that he teaches at Simile and coaches at Legacy, so he knows all those kids from when they're sixth graders up until they're seniors. So, but him
yep,
building that relationship early on at Simile and knowing all these kids, but it just the more I've coached with them over the years, the more I see that just relationships in teaching and relationships in life, how important and impactful it can be everywhere we go. I mean, you and I go to softball and we all BS with each other left and right because we've all been together for X amount of years. We know each other, and not that too many of us, I know we all have our kind of smaller groups that hang out outside of softball, but there's a reason all of our guys have stuck together for so long because we all just kind of get along and mesh together pretty well in several different ways. So it's just more
yep,
proof that relationships can do such a big thing for us. So my last question slash topic kind of covers more your near future and into your overall future, both in life and connected to your teaching career. But one thing I was preached to early on in my career that I definitely thought about and reflected on and kind of put into action, but I didn't know how important it was until I guess life got busier. Obviously, I got married, had a kid, so life schedule and just life changes as we go. But I think balance is a massive one, especially if you're dating someone or you're married or you have kids, no matter how many kids. If you coach on the side, I mean, I coach fifth and sixth grade football, and it still takes a boatload of my time in the fall. I absolutely love it, but the time commitment you don't realize till after the season, and you realize how much free time you have now. But especially as a person with you, who I know you're dating someone, you're looking to get into some coaching here, because of how much you enjoy sports and how much you enjoy teaching, and obviously they mesh together perfectly, and that's where we get the best coaches. But how do you plan? And I know you might not have too big of an answer yet because you haven't had to experience the balance part of the full-time piece with coaching and the rest of your life. But how do you plan to potentially balance your personal life with your profession so that you're not an overworked and exhausted teacher at the end of the day?
sure. Biggest thing right there is sleep. Sleep is also super important. I don't like going to work when I only have 5 hours of sleep. So, um, another thing is, speaking about coaching, um, so I actually just got asked to do some legacy softball coaching. So in the
Sweet.
spring, so I'm gonna
Awesome.
I plan on gonna do that. So I gotta find more balance there. So hopefully I can kind of balance some stuff. But another thing is I want to be out of the school when it's my time to be out of school. I don't want to hang back because I got my own things to do. I got to work out, I got to do all the stuff. I got a personal life to deal with, and so having that equal balance, I'll do all my work. And the good thing about at Legacy with the mods is you have like for me, even with a full time schedule, I have some days where I have 2 hours off in between
Mhm.
classes, and so
Oh, I
having
wish.
those, yeah, and
I
having those two
wish.
hours,
That
having
sounds
those 2 hours,
fantastic.
yeah, it's awesome. And so it's like having those 2 hours, it's like, wow, I can finish all my work for the week just in
Hmm.
that 2 hour period. And so, even at Legacy, like there's other days where I think it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. I have like 2 hour breaks in between. And then like I have a class and I have like another 40 minutes off. So it's like trying to find time between there and having a balance, but also within that 2 hour break, I'm able to go work out. I can go work out during that time, and I can also go home if I gotta do stuff in my house, I can do that. Just kind of that kind of thing. So that's why I kind of like how Legacy kind of schedules their classes and such because it gives that equal time to you got to work on your stuff, but it gives you adequate time to do that stuff. But you also have time to go do your other things that kind of balance your other life outside of work. So
Absolutely. As a teacher in my 8th year, it is, you don't realize how happy it makes my teacher heart to hear a young teacher say, when it's my time to go home, I'm going home. Because
yep,
there's so many teachers that get hooked, and it's not even half the time because of their family dynamics. They just get obsessed with the profession. And it's nothing against people who like doing that, because if they like doing that, that's up to them. But I think being married and having and coaching seasons and having a 1-year-old to go pick up too really gets my butt out the door. But it's really important, especially at your young age, to realize that I don't need to be here any longer than I need to be here. I know having that much prep time probably helps you a ton.
yeah,
I wish I had 2 hours of prep. Wednesdays I have an hour, and that hour feels like 15
oh
minutes.
yeah,
So, and you're probably well aware of how fast that time goes.
oh
But
yeah,
it's so important, especially as young people. And I know my first and second years I was coaching 2 sports. I mean, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was in Bismarck, so I didn't have anything. I didn't have anybody or anything to rush home to other than going over to the high school to work out in the small town I was in. But my mentor definitely taught me you don't get extra credit for being the last car in the parking lot. So,
yep,
and there's some nights where it happened during football season where you got to rush over to practice and then come over and finish some stuff. And like I said, I didn't have anything I needed to rush home to, but you quickly your motor that you start in August with definitely dwindles down. And as young people, it's good to hear that you're aware that when I need to go home, I need to get my butt out the door before I find 12 other things I need to do. I know a quote I've used a lot in the last 2 years since I'm trying to teach myself to get out the door is, that's a tomorrow problem.
yep.
But that's a tomorrow problem. That's a Monday problem. And when we get to Monday and it's there, you probably won't be very happy that it's still there. But that's a tomorrow problem is definitely something I've learned to say a lot more.
That's super
So,
smart. Yeah.
but well, is there anything else topics wise that you want to talk teaching? I know I have one more question that just popped in my head because you kind of highlighted it with legacy, but anything else that you want to share from your student teaching that wasn't already talked about?
No, I think we covered it. I think we all
Covered
covered
a
it.
lot, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I do have a question about legacies, just their schedule, and I know you could talk about the schedule and how it's set up for hours on end. I coached a legacy. I'm not there very often anymore because of my 1-year-old that I like to hang out with in the spring, especially when the weather gets nicer. But I think I've asked like 5 of my players when I was at Legacy to explain the schedules, and I think I've gotten 5 very different answers, so I still don't completely understand. But for our viewers or our listeners who aren't aware, in Bismarck Public Schools, Bismarck and Century still work off kind of the old school schedule, don't they?
Yep. So at BHS and Legacy, they have 8 periods. So you have, yeah, 7 periods of classes, and you have 1 period of lunch. And those periods consist of 50 minutes each. Um, Anyway, at Legacy it's different. They're called mods. So there's 23 different mods for the day. Every mod is 20 minutes. So some days you'll have your normal 60-minute classes. So you have 3 mods there for a class, 3 mods to a different one, 3 mods, and then some days one class for PE, I guess. Um, one class, so every class gets one 80-minute class per week. So you get to do more. Um, you get to do more activities. And one thing that we kind of kind of like to bribe to Century and
Hmm.
and BHS is how we can have different classes that kind of balance out like the other classes that kind
Yep.
of go in between. Like we have a class called outdoor rec. Like it's from 1:30 to 3:30. It's a
I was
long
gonna say,
class.
I know, Clem used to have classes that would go like cross country skiing and all that
Yep.
stuff, and I was like, how do you
Yeah.
have enough time to do that?
Yeah. So they get all jealous about it because we can go ice skating, we can go bowling, we can go just do all these fun activities out in the public and come back and still have time for classes or whatever. So like
Yeah.
that's a big thing, having that flexible schedule is super nice. And so I really enjoy it. Feels like I feels like I'm also in college at the same time I'm not because it's so different compared to what I'm so used to in high school. But the reason why Legacy chose that because some school in Wisconsin they did it, and so
Yeah.
they kind of asked about it when they were interviewing for building the school and stuff. So they went with the mod schedule, and I think it's really creative that they did it and something different, and it offers students more activities and more stuff and obviously at Legacy they really value your time there.
Hmm.
So say a student is all done with all your work in your 60-minute, 80-minute class, you can flex them. So when it comes to flexing, they can go to a different classroom, check in with that teacher, and work on that work. So like for me as a PE teacher, I'll have students that are done with their work in a different class, and they'll walk in the gym, they'll ask if they can play, and that's the biggest thing I
Hmm.
really enjoy is
That's
like
cool.
students will come to me and ask me if they want to participate. And it's the best thing. I'm like, heck yeah! Like I don't care. You coming here asking me to, you want to participate in some physical activity. I'm not gonna say no to that.
No.
So, no. So that's what I really enjoy, and being able to flex, and that's one thing I like about Legacy is how they really value your time there.
And I don't know how much of an issue it is anymore, but I know they had some issues at first, and maybe they still do with some, but a lot of kids transferring to Legacy so they could take advantage of the schedule. And some people might be watching or listening to this going, well, these kids just do whatever they want all day. And it's absolutely not what it is. It's trying to get kids ready for college schedule. And I know some
Yep.
kids decide not to go to college, but it's time management. It's you still have to get your stuff done. You still have to get your stuff done
Yep.
on
You
time. You
still
still
gotta
get
show up to
grades.
class.
You're
Yep.
just more in control of your schedule, which really probably grows more independence, and you probably grow up quicker, essentially. But
Yeah.
obviously, you've lived through it as a teacher, and I would be really interested. It'd be kind of strange for me to be just sitting in class and two random students walk in and want to do their work, but I'm so used to having the same kids all day long, so it'd be
Yeah.
very different for my perspective on education. But I know Mr. Schmidt, he was a history teacher at BHS when I was there. And then when he went over to Legacy, I know he pushed this hard, and that's how he got a lot of the teachers to come with him. And I know they enjoy it a lot. And I mean, from the sounds of it, kids, it makes learning and it makes school that much more engaging, which probably
Yep.
helps your attendance as well.
Yep. Yep. We have a big thing. So I mean, and honestly, they're held accountable. It's their time management. So if they're not going to show up, they're not going to get points.
Yep.
And so, it's still like every other class. You don't have to go to a period if you don't want to from in like Legacy at a Century or BHS. You don't have to go to a period if you don't want to, but you show up. It's just you think it's mandatory. It's not mandatory, but um, it's like having that. What's the word? Um, I lost I lost the word of it. Anyway, um, yeah, just having that personal accountability. That's what it was. Accountability to showing up
Yep.
to class is a big thing. So
Well, I thank you for joining me. I know you're busy with jumping into the education world, and like we talked about with balance, make sure you're always balancing. It's like I said, it's good to hear a teacher say that before he even starts his first year, because it is a massive piece of not burning out in this profession, because we're losing so many good ones left and right from not being supported by something to just being exhausted and not being able to handle what this profession can do to us unless we manage ourselves and take care of ourselves. So I appreciate you stopping by and talking some teaching and some student teaching. Like I said, I have my own right now, and I'm super excited to have her through the end of March. And as much as I teach her, I learned so much from the student teacher as well, through ideas, creativity, and just things that we as teachers have to be reminded of in our chaotic, busy days. So have a good one, and thanks for hanging out, Matt
Yeah.
Miller.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. See you in a few weeks
I know.
at the
Hopefully the
softball
snow melts
diamond.
away.
What's that?
Hopefully the snow melts away and we can do
Oh
something.
gosh.
Yeah,
I don't even want to
we're-
look at a softball field right now. It's frozen beyond belief.
yeah. And I think Ian McDonald, me and him are buying a couple new bats this year, so I think we're gonna
Perfect.
be pretty
So
excited for that. Yeah.
with that 800 then, huh?
Oh yeah, you know it.
All right. Have a good one, man. Thanks.
All right. See ya.